What is up, everybody? I'm Joey, and I'm joined by Shane. And today we're going to be talking about some NFL player props that we like going into Week 9. Some players that we think are going to go off in a very interesting week. So, Shane, you want to start us off with one of your picks? We're going to be consistently, hopefully, doing these player props each week to help you guys out, make some fantasy decisions or some other kind of picks based on our rationale and what we like with our picks. So, and we're also going to give our mortal lock and see how those do every week. So, Shane, you want to start us off with your first player prop for week 9?
Yeah, so I'll start off with we got Devonte Adams over 78.5 receiving yards. He's taking on the Jaguars, coming off a really rough week where he only put up 3 receiving yards. Um, this is really just like a bounce back pick. I expect the Raiders to stop relying on the run as much as they did, especially after last week. They got embarrassed in New Orleans. The offense had nothing going for them. I think they're going to rely on getting Devonte the ball more in this game. I think they're gonna just run a lot of plays for him so he can get back involved in this offense as we saw in the earlier weeks of the season. And I mean, 78.5 doesn't even have to be like a crazy game for Devonte. I think he can get that while still having a pretty mediocre game. He's the best wide receiver in football, if not top three. So I think he's going to get that line pretty easily.
Yeah, I like that pick. Getting into my first player prop pick, I'm actually going to be going with Aaron Jones over 65.5 rushing yards. It seems like the Packers are finally giving him majority of the carries. They gave him 20 carries last game against a solid Bills rush defense, and um he went for 143 yards, a huge game for him, and I expect them to do the same thing against the Lions rush defense that ranks very low in, or they give up a lot of rush yards per game. Fantasy point wise, they give up the second most points to running backs. So I like this spot for Aaron Jones to go over 65.5 rushing yards.
Are we saving our locks for the end or
Yeah, same for them.
all right? My next pick up is going to be Mac Jones under 210.5 passing yards. He's taking on the Colts. This is really just because I expect this game to have a low total and I expect the Patriots to lean on the run. I don't think they really trust Mac, especially after all the turnovers he has had this year. I think Rhamondre is going to have a big game. And overall, I think both these offenses are just going to kind of run this ball a lot and make this game really slow and low scoring. So I just don't see 210.5 for Mac Jones. And I believe Devontae Parker is out, which is also a nice factor for that under. So yeah, Mac Jones under 210.5.
Yeah, I like that pick against a really stout Colts defense against the pass. For my next one, I'm also going with a quarterback and his passing yards. I'm going with Patrick Mahomes over 280.5 passing yards. He's been starting to heat up lately, getting over that number in the past 3 weeks. And I expect him to do the same this week against a really bad Titans defense against the pass. They give up 297 passing yards per game against opposing quarterbacks, and against a team like the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead, I expect them to get some big plays, and he's going to get a lot of passing yards. And I think the Chiefs will run away with this one, but I think he'll still get over this passing yard number pretty easily. So I'm taking Patrick Mahomes over 280.5 passing yards.
All right. My next pick is going to be building off of my last one. It's Rhamondre Stevenson over 0 0.5 total touchdowns. I think, like I said, they're going to lean on him a lot, and I just think he's going to get in the end zone. I mean, touchdown picks, they're not always going to be consistent because it's just a one play thing. But I like my odds taking Rhamondre to get in. I think, like I said, he's just going to get the ball a lot. So that's my reasoning.
Yeah, that's valid. For my next pick, I'm going to be going with Justin Fields over 49.5 rushing yards against the Dolphins defense, who give up a lot of rushing yards to quarterbacks. I They're actually second, I believe, in giving up rushing yards to quarterbacks, just behind the Patriots. And we saw a couple weeks ago, Justin Fields absolutely ran all over the Patriots. Forget how many exact yards he got in that game. I believe it was around 80 or 90. And I expect him to do the same in this game, which would go way over 49.5. So I like him to get over that number against the Miami Dolphins at home.
My next pick is also a Bears rusher over on his rush yards. I guess you could say these picks are kind of going up against each other, but I don't really think they are completely. It's Khalil Herbert over 40.5 rushing yards. The Dolphins do allow just the second lowest um, amount of rush yards to running backs per game this season, but that doesn't scare me too much because Khalil Herbert has hit this in his last 3 games easily, and he's hit it in 4 of his last 5. The Bears are really trying to get Herbert more involved in this offense. I think they want him to be the RB1 eventually. I think he's just really good, straight up, and I think that they think that too. So I think he'll get the volume, and I think the Bears are also just going to try to make this a slow moving, slow paced, Windy City, typical Chicago game. It's in Chicago, and I think they're going to try to keep it low scoring by leaning on the run a lot. So I think Khalil Herbert gets maybe 10 to 15 rushes in this game, and I think he can hit over 40.5 with that much volume.
Yeah, hopefully for both of us, we see a lot of rushing with both the quarterback and the running back. I got the exact stat from that Patriots game. He got 91 yards in that game. And in his past 5 games, Justin Fields has gone over 49.5 to add to my reasoning that I said before. But to get into my next pick, I'm going to be going with my guy, Justin Jefferson, over 90.5 receiving yards. I mean, this just seems like a pretty safe one for me. He's hit it in his last 4 games against the Commanders defense that gives up a good amount of yards to receivers. And I mean, even though they're more middle of the pack than down at the bottom, they are still on the lower half. And when you have a guy like Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins hammers him the ball, I expect him to have a really big game yardage wise, and I expect him to go over this number for the 5th week in a row.
Yeah, I feel like the lines are always disrespecting Jefferson. They're always lower than what he's been putting up. I like that pick. Moving on to, is this Locky time? We giving our
Yeah.
final picks? All right, so my lock of the week is going to be Deon Jackson over 21.5 receiving yards. They're taking on the New England Patriots, who give up the 10th most receiving yards to running backs this year. You got Sam Ehlinger under center for the Colts. No Jonathan Taylor, just traded away Nyheim Hines to the Bills. So Deon Jackson's really the only notable running back in that backfield. And you typically, with young quarterbacks, you see a lot of leaning on your guys in the flats, your running backs or tight ends in the flats. So I think Ehlinger is going to look Jackson's way a lot. He's hit this both of his games where he did start this year. And I mean, this total is just really low. It's just a couple of catches and he'll hit that. So yeah, 21.5 in Ehlinger's start last week against the Texans, or excuse me, against the Commanders. Nyheim Hines hit this total when he was kind of that lead receiving back. And now Jackson's got the backfield to himself. He's not only the receiving back this game, but he's also going to be just their RB1, like I said, because Jonathan Taylor's out. So this is my lock of the week.
Yeah, I really like that pick. I think that's a steal at 21.5 the last game. Where he was the RB1, he went way over that receiving yards wise. I expect him to do the same. I think there'll be a lot of dump out or check down to running backs in this game where the Colts defense is really solid against the pass. So I definitely like that pick. I actually already did my mortal lock but I'll say my final pick and then I'll say my mortal lock. So my final pick is going to be Zach Ertz over 10.0 fantasy points this week against the Seattle Seahawks. I think he's going to have another great game against them. He had 14 points last time he played them earlier in the season in a lower scoring game, 19-9 finish. I expect this game to be a little more high scoring with D-Hop more involved, which means more touchdown potential. He's hit this over in his last or 4 of his last 5 games. He went way over receiving yards and receptions last time he played Seattle too. But Seattle does give up the most fantasy points in the NFL to tight ends, so it's just an automatic. Any tight end that's playing the Seahawks, I always look at them first. And Zach Ertz is a solid option, so I really like him to go over 10.0 fantasy points. But my mortal lock for this week is going to be the Aaron Jones over 65.5 rushing yards against the Lions. Like I said before, Lions have a terrible rush defense. I think that he's going to be way more involved in the offense, and I expect him to go off in a game that I think Packers are going to have to run it because they've been struggling and they really need this divisional win. So I expect them to be in the lead at the end and maybe even some more rushing yards for Aaron Jones. So I really like him to get over 65.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I really like that pick too. That seems like a steal against the Lions. So if you're going to use 2 of these picks, definitely use the Aaron Jones prop and Deon Jackson prop. I feel like we're both really confident in those 2, especially.
Yeah, hopefully we're coming back to this next week when we do our recap of this week and we see that both of those hit. But that wraps it up for our player props for this podcast. See you guys in the next one. Hopefully those all hit. Make sure to follow our Twitter for extra player props posted on there. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.